do you feel any different about like where you're at in terms of, how would I say this? Like where you're at in terms of yourself in relation to your disease. Like, do you acknowledge that, that alcohol is always going to bring you back to that place, and that I mean, it's, that you can't safely drink, without that, the kind of wreckage piling up really rapidly. Yeah, I guess that's what I'm.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the hard pill I have to swallow too. Is I'm an alcoholic, and whatever I do, when I get to that state, when it happens, and I go, I'm going, and I won't stop until I'm either, whatever they say, like in the other program, jails, institutions, or death, and it's just like, yeah, like one of those things are gonna stop me, and it's something that I have to live with for the rest of my life, and it's actually like, it's like that's something that's been on my mind the last couple days too. Is like, dude, I'm an alcoholic, I'm screwed forever, and that's how I feel right now, because it's just it's hard for me to believe, and it's not like I want to think of it as this big forever blah 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 like everybody says. I do it day at a time. I do challenge other people, like, what time did you wake up this morning, oh cool, and encourage them and say, you got the more sober time than me. And even though, it's just like, I never look at it as time, unless it's day by day, because that's all we have. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and yesterday's already gone. All I have is this moment and till 12 o'clock until I go to bed and wake up. So
I think that's a fantastic outlook, and a good way to deal with the kind of compulsion that can sometimes arise to drink or use, to look at, like, you get through, like, or promise yourself, well, I'm not gonna drink or use for today, and then when tomorrow comes, in my experience, that feeling is gone, and if it's still there, well, I'll just put it off for another day, and you keep going that way until you have that moment where you realize, oh, fuck, I haven't thought about this for days, weeks, months, and that's a really special experience. So what does what does tomorrow look like? How are you? Where do you see yourself going from here?
I don't know. I don't like to think that far ahead, even though it is just tomorrow or, the next days. It's like, I do attempt planning, but I know most of the time, every time I do plan stuff, it falls through. So I'm actually currently learning this, is to just, take it as it is, or like just move forward as much as possible. But when it comes down to me as an individual, just, I want that career. I want to establish something, and I want to give back, like, the stuff that was given to me while I was going through stuff. I was a youth at risk, and it's just, and when they taught me a lot of stuff about the environment and everything like that, that enlightened me to want to do the same thing back to the youth that don't really know anything about the ecosystem of, like, the creek habitats and whatnot. Stuff like that is like what really sparks my interest, and that's something that, like, I really want to do. There's all these other things I want to do as well, but that's mainly what I want to do, is just keep giving back, be selfless as much as possible, and not want anything in return. Like, that's just, yeah.
Have you made an amendment? When you mentioned the landscaper who had helped you out, and then I think the woman from what was that advocacy? But if you could make like an amends, or even reach out to them and say, let them know what their efforts, how much they meant to you, could really mean a lot to them.
That hasn't even crossed my mind at all. That actually sounds like a really good idea to do.
Yeah, well, I encourage you, just because sometimes, especially, people with these agencies, like, for me, reaching out to like the 911 dispatcher who handled my overdose call, and it's like a lot of these things people do are really thankless, and you like reach out and be like, hey, I'm doing really good now, and like, it's just a good way to make them feel really stoked. So I'd encourage you to do that. What about school or something? Like, what do you mean, the Creek ecology thing? Like,
so like what I learned was from the I'm drawing a blank right now. SCYEC, so Sonoma County Youth Ecology Corps. I learned all that stuff hands on, but there's schooling that you could take, like, horticulture classes and whatnot. I mean, it just shows you, like, you learn about native California plants and landscape plants and whatnot, ornamental stuff and like all the stuff that you need to learn. But there's other options and whatnot. Currently with like my record right now, like I was talking to somebody just recently. I was at the skate park early morning, ladies out there, city parks for the city, Santa Cruz, and we were just talking about like all the stuff in the creek, and she's like, why aren't you working with us and blah blah blah. And I explained the two situations why I'm not working with them. One, I have a felony, and two, my driver's license is suspended. And she was bummed. She was like, wow, like, did you go to college for all this stuff? And I'm like, no, I learned it all hands on. And she was like, what? Like, yeah, so it was like, I have, like, when it comes to stuff like that, I mean, I just fucking had chills go through me, because it's like something that, like, that's something that really, like, makes me feel good, is when I can talk to somebody that has, like, or knows the same stuff as me, or I know the same stuff as them.
Mm. I would really encourage you, and maybe you have, but to look at expungement, and because even with the felony, if it can be charged as a misdemeanor, basically talk to me after this, because like, like, you could get that stuff almost certainly wiped off your record and cleared up, but yeah, that sounds fantastic, and yeah, I can see how into it you are. So that'd be fantastic if you could move down that path. Turn a passion into a career. Is really, gosh, that should be all of our goal. So, do you have any advice for anybody else out there who's maybe struggling with this thing, or contemplating getting back into it? Or
I wouldn't necessarily say advice, but from my experience, don't let the little things that are out of place, like the certain little things that, like, why you got in trouble that day, like the certain little miracles that are happening, because I look back on all those and I wish that I could have made a different choice on what side of the trail I could take, and I never took those as warning signs. So, and for the ones that do want this and don't have the drive to do it, something that I've heard in most of the rooms is that you've earned the seat. So it doesn't matter, like, if you don't think you deserve it, you've earned the seat. You paid a lot of money for it, and it's yours if you want it. Nobody's forcing you, but it's probably the best thing I got for that, because it's like I've been almost pushed into it, but the more I keep going, the more I'm waking up. So,
well, that's fantastic, Mike. I really thank you for joining me tonight, and thank you for joining us today on the Stories of Addiction podcast. To all our listeners, we wish you to stay sober and be happy. Take care.